Come and get started on a new mission, a new direction, a new intention. Welcome to 5.8G Alive at Connections 50 Plus. I am Terry-Ann Joseph Brathwaite.
And I am Jennifer Gibbons Joseph, catering to all your prospects in the third act of life.
Economic well-being, social gratification, personal fulfillment.
Join us on Wednesday at 6 p.m. on Connections 50 Plus Facebook page, YouTube channel,
and on Gael the Caribbean.
Good afternoon and welcome everyone. This is Connections 50 Plus 5.8G Alive. It is Wednesday, 26th of January, and I am Terry-Ann Joseph Brathwaite, one of the co-creators of Connections 50 Plus. With me as usual.
Hi, good evening, everyone. I am Jennifer Gibbons Joseph, the other co-creator of Connections 50 Plus. Welcome to this evening's show.
Yes, Jennifer, it is the 26th of January. January is almost done. But this weekend, I know you had, I want to start by joining the Gibbons family in wishing Dora Gibbons a happy centenary celebration, 100 years. Jen, you're in a rare group of people who can celebrate a parent going to 100 years. What was it?
Terry-Ann, thank you. Actually, you know, it's something I never thought of, but coming close and you know, when people say, wow, 100, it hit me that, yeah, you know, it is a milestone. I'm still getting over it. It's a few days, but I'm still getting over it. It was, you know, just fantastic. I think we should never take anyone, I should say, for granted. But when you have family, we shouldn't wait until an occasion to really celebrate them and tell them how you feel, etc. And let me tell you, Terry-Ann, and you know my mom, she didn't stop talking.
It's her birthday.
I mean, let me tell you,
it's her day.
She had a fantastic time. We had a brunch, a nice, you know, semi-formal brunch. Press and more press. We had all the television stations, the newspaper, the Minister of Family and Social Affairs there. And my mother's very, very collective. Her brain, I mean, good. She sees very well. Yeah. We thought she had a problem with hearing, but she heard everything. You know, it was just fantastic. And you know, as a daughter, we all did give a little talk, you know, a little 3 minutes, something, tribute to her.
11 years, that was my experience. I want to thank you all very much. I've been blessed to reach this age. I've been blessed, right? And I think I am one of the persons being in God's plan, because He has a plan for every one of us. And His plan was for me to reach 100.
And for me, and it's been, you know, talking about my mom, you see, values and principles, Terry-Ann, that is something that when you lay that foundation for your children, that is such a solid foundation. Nothing takes that away. So, you know, and coming from her era, and even now, because we still continue with it, family is so important, you know, family. And for my mom, well, for my parents, but in terms of my mom, she was the disciplinarian. We had to really, even if, and you know, you say when a big family, you must have little squibbles and things, etc. For us, you cannot go to bed vexed. So don't matter how you know, what happened. Staying together, showing love before you go to bed. You mustn't be vexed with each other. Okay, so that was the family. Spirituality is like tops, having breakfast, lunch, all the three main meals as a family around the table. Prayers is it, you must say a grace before meals, you know, all these, that kind of solid foundation. Without every Sunday, without Miss Rain, how they say rain, sun or storm, you have to go and praise God because that's your source. In terms of the education, wow, education is key. Everybody, you know, you are capable. So we are taught that you can do anything you want to without any fuss, without telling you what you have to, what you have to become, but knowing that you must have ambition.
Yeah.
In the early days, they were very big on deportment. So because I came from a family of a lot of girls, my mother was very big on deportment. And deportment for us is you must always be well dressed. We cannot leave home looking shabby. So when she's taken out, we always, every man jack have to be well dressed. She sewed too, Terrian. So she sewed our clothes, so we all well dressed. And our thing was, you have to walk with your back straight, your head high. So very proud.
Yeah.
So be confident. So that's where that kind of, you know, you build confidence with who you are, loving yourself. Don't let no. When you lay that foundation, you know, at my age now, it's never left me. And of course, I passed it on to my children. So that type of legacy is what my mother, I mean, she going very strong. Eh? So I'm not talking like if she going anywhere soon. But has laid that solid foundation. And if you speak to her, Terrian, it's still there. You know, she spoke about how, well, you know, living to age 100 and about, you know, being close to her God. And that wasn't just talk. And let me say one other thing. You see, being charitable, Terrian, it has nothing to do with money. It's not about giving a donation about $1,000 or so. No, it's giving of your time to help others, you know, being kind to others and not judging. And that again stayed with me. That is so, it's natural for me to help someone in need. Understanding it's not just about money, but you could help them in different ways. We never felt we too poor to give because it wasn't about money. It's about time, your skill, and showing that you care.
Time, talent, and treasure. So, and treasure is not always in the bank.
So my mother, Terrian, talk about happy. Such a grateful person. Gratitude is her thing too. So it's all about, you know, beautiful people. Her neighbors celebrated her in a big way. So I will put the banner for you all to see. It was a whole day of celebration. The day before her birthday, the day on her birthday, and continue. And let me give you just one joke before we close on mommy. So there's a banner on the street and against the wall in the house, on the house, and a lot of decorations. And this guy passing in a van stop and say, "Oh, it's here the lady lives. I just saw it on television." He said he lives in a Vale, right? He said, and I heard this, they call the name of the street. And he said, I thought I must pass and look and see if I see her outside to wave. I found that was so beautiful, you know, when I told her that it just made her feel good.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's great to celebrate all birthday. Well, I love a celebration of a birthday, but you could just imagine 100, it hit me. And the grants only saying 100.
You know, Jennifer, one of the things that I think is best about having a centenarian, and especially one who is still cognitive, because you can have centenarians that they nowhere present, is the wisdom of having lived through from 1922 to 2022, the eras that she was, so she would have, you have memories of when you were a teenager, when you were 12 and so on. So that's 34. That's just that period before the wars, and what has happened in Trinidad through all our booms and falls, the discovery of oil, the development and the unions, the development of housing from being a poor place to, and just to be able to sit at her feet and talk and listen. I think it is such a tremendous treasure for your family and the young people there. And you know, very often we have these troves in our midst, and they say prophets aren't really recognized at home, or you know, those things. And I really do pray and bless your family and pray that all, especially the younger ones, would recognize the great treasure that is in their great grandma or great grandma, depending on how, because you'd have greats and greats inside of there. You know, that they will understand. You take a 2022 problem to a 100-year-old person who can relate to so many time periods. The kind of feedback and advice you get, you can't buy that anywhere. So
definitely,
I really do. I join you in celebrating your mom, and I really wish her. Let's go to 105 and keep it going.
She definitely looks like she can do that.
So that was excellent, you know. And Jennifer, so today we are continuing the journey. You know, it's so amazing how everything interacts, because last week we talked with Alison about Are You Caved In? And we decided to have conversations about with people who are adapting, you know. And I am thinking, I come back again to your mom, Jennifer, that man, she lived through so many opportunities to be in cave.
And I'm telling you, in her speech, and she had several speeches, of course, one, and she spoke about setting goals, you know, setting goals and how important it is to have your goals in front of you. You know, don't lose sight of your goals.
Yes. And I mean, some of us think the sky is falling and the pandemic is over, and we totally, I mean, go sit with Dora and hear about catch tail and strike.
You understand? She said you go through challenges, but you keep forward because, you know, you're going to get through it.
Exactly.
You're going to get through it. Yeah.
Have your faith, have your goal, have your determination. But anyway, I think our guest today really complements not only what we discussed last week with Alison about overcoming fear and being focused. And of course, we will talk more about our vision board exercise later. But we brought an old friend back, Ian Jeffers. You remember his discussions with us. And earlier in the day, Jennifer was busy fetting. Jennifer was fetting with her mom. So she had the weekend off.
I was getting over. I was resting, not fetting. And I needed 2 days to rest.
So earlier today, I sat with Ian and we were talking about life in the pandemic and the kinds of adjustments that had to be made. And I think viewers, you would look at this conversation and you will really understand a lot of what Jennifer was saying about her mom with longevity and resilience, and also this issue of goals. And most importantly, he gives us a tool to get out of that cave, continuing to build relations. So let's get in tune and listen to Ian Jeffers. Okay, so listeners, this is a familiar face. This is a familiar face to our C50 plus audience, our Wednesday Alive audience. Ian Jeffers, welcome. Welcome back to Wednesday Alive. How are you?
I'm doing well.
That is not a typical answer, Ian, given that we're in this thing called a pandemic. So before we start, I want to just, and we do this with a lot of our guests. The last 2 years have been different. I mean, real different. And that global thing, what do you make of this pandemic that we are in?
Oh, God. Everybody's looking forward to the new normal because they think this is some sort of a thing that's going to change us and turn us into something else. And nobody knows what it's going to turn us into. and we are all faced, well, certainly first time in my lifetime, we are all on this planet faced with the same challenges wherever you go, and it's incredible, astounding to see how different people respond to these different challenges and the type of conflict that's emerging from it. I think that's the most interesting look for me. People are, when you face challenges like this, people look deep within themselves to see what's there to carry them through it. And they're finding all sorts of things, and they're finding all sorts of differences. But then again, they're in a place where everybody knows that we have to come together, and we don't know how. And that to me is testimony to the way we have been living.
One of the things that Jennifer and I, when we started looking at our cohort, the 5.8G cohort, and realized that for a lot of us, the second act was really an act. That time between probably 36, probably 25 to 55, 60, it was really an act in that we were performing, doing real work. Yeah. Performing, creating lives, creating wealth, creating influence. Some people were on the other end of the scale, destroying lives, destroying influence, and things like that. But because it was an act, the third act is complicated because you don't have the props that were there to support you on the second act stage. And now that the pandemic has come in, I interpret what you say as all the props gone. So now, where do I go to find who I am, and therefore to make sense of this thing, and where I go again?
And at the risk of being cliched, it's also a tremendous opportunity because we are all in this place, and we should be talking to each other certainly differently from how we're talking to each other now. You know what I mean? There seems to be, we're talking, we're all in this together, but then when we start to talk to each other, it's the level of conflict is palpable, and and there hasn't been the voice, whatever that is, that says, okay, let's step back and see where we are here, and like what do we really mean when we say we're all in this together, and what is that going to look like?
Especially when I'm accustomed grabbing as much as I could for myself and swirling it away without you knowing.
So I think that is what has us in a lot of trouble, because we're not talking to each other. And I don't know if it's because we don't know how to talk to each other, because we were pretending to talk to each other all the time. I don't know. It's a very interesting place, so for us to be. And the great level of uncertainty says that we don't know how it's going to pan out. And that leaves a whole gap for people to come in with, and with their influences and we're in a mess.
We have an addiction to certainty, and we have an addiction to knowing and being sure. So just allowing it to flow, allowing it to go where it will, and be confident in your ability to ride it is now gone. And I'm even more, I won't say surprised. I believe that our 5.8G cohort is best placed to deal with this because of all the really experienced ones.
Exactly.
They have been longest on the stage acting, but
but really and truly, you know, in reality, we're silent. Huh?
why do you say so?
Because, you know, because I'm not, no, granted, I'm not hearing us talking to each other. You know, I'm hearing us talking about how we're surviving, but I'm not hearing us talking to each other about how we're going forward with this. You know, you know, I'm not seeing us making the kinds of connections that we need to make with the persons who are emerging, so to speak. You know, it's so it seems as though we're all over the place and we're not making the connections. Is that the name of this, what we're doing here?
That's what we're exactly.
We are not making the connections. You know, you know, you did a program once with children talking to their parents or something like that.
Intergenerational legacy.
Intergenerational,
Yeah.
And that struck me because, like, you know, the persons who you had, clearly they were talking to each other, but I don't know who's talking to everybody else. You know, it's as though we've become kind of clandestine. You know, when we should be opening up, we are talking opening up, but we're really sort of getting deeper within our own spaces. You know what I mean? So, and that adds to the level of uncertainty because you don't know what you're dealing with, you know, and people are being more cautious almost, you know. It's like, and then you add the uncertainty, we're a mess.
You know, how did we make connections before all this technology and all this great ability that we have to live by ourselves in a bubble and still be successful? This great ability because of technology, ambition, whatever it is. And long ago, and I it's not too long, I'm 60, and you grew up with your work life and a non-work life. And the non-work life contained many clubs and groups: a sewing club, a choir, a craft club, some kind of community group, whether many of them would have been based around churches. Some would have been community based. The community center, you had classes, you had first aid, you joined the Red Cross, you had all kinds of groups that you could have joined and associated with. That I think, and now I look in hindsight, gave your life balance and dimension apart from work. So you didn't completely get sucked into what you did for a living, but there was another part of you. And that, I think, in the last, let's say 30, 40 years, I don't know that there are many of those around, those groups. You know, the groups we're talking about here? Yeah. And I wonder sometimes if the absence of those are the things that we naturally fall into to have a sense of context and relationship and friends. What do you think?
Yeah, well, it's such a long time since we've been able to come together. You know, I mean, and that is a factor. I mean, that is a serious factor. We haven't been, because the things you're talking about is that, like, you walk down the street and you see people and you say hi, and you spend a little time and you do whatever like that. I mean, do you have it? Will you pass it on to me? So that has, You know, like people have locked off. You know what I mean?
I remember trying to get my children to join a music class, karate, and they kind of pushed back.
Yes.
But I did. I mean, you had the dance class and you had drama and you had all kinds of things. And it was like, excuse me, I have things to do. I don't need to go by those people and do what? Come on, give me a break. I have my circle and my gadget.
Yeah, you know, and in the places that you read about that seems to be doing well during this COVID period, you know, it's you know, all of these societies have been directed by some
Benevolent dictator.
system that says this is what you do and this is what you don't do, and so you know, I'm finding that I mean, look at the fight that people are talking about over wearing a mask. You know, like you know, and that's a democratic country fight. You know.
Yep.
And every time there's that kind of maybe I'm missing something here because it seems as though no one else is seeing it. Every time there's that kind of a conflict, there's a spike. You know what I mean? We're just not talking to each other in a way to come to a resolution. And that makes people who are keeping quiet and saying, no, I'm definitely not getting involved in that. I'm just minding my business and I'm doing the right thing. So, you know, it's
you know, it's interesting.
We haven't discovered the leadership yet coming forth that's going to speak to that in a way that everybody could listen. You know, it's because I think we're learning that we never really had that kind of leadership.
I think we had it in communities. It was very dispersed. There was no one absolute leader who could direct and say what should be done, which is where I think we've evolved to as a society today. And for most people, it is a political leader or an economic leader, but it's hardly ever, a religious leader. It is hardly ever a leader of the society or the community, except on the criminal network. So you don't have those people to direct you and guide you to different things that you can do with your life. And it's interesting because last week we talked about being caved in, using that as a metaphor for, I think, what you just described. People not knowing how to talk to start the conversation and exchange, or how to adapt to contactless form of communication, just withdrawing. And I think I like the reason that you get, we just don't know how to talk to each other. And probably people not being familiar with technology, because we are having a free-flowing conversation right now, and not many people are able to just do that. And I think it's to our detriment.
I'm not sure what you mean to say that not many people are able to do that. You know, I know at certain levels, you know, and and we're discovering that in the kind of work that we do, you know, the Boys Cement program, that, like, you know, there's the issue of devices, you know, because you need devices in order to do this properly, you know, really, to have that kind of communication. But I think we make a little bit too much. You're talking about the free-flowing conversation that we are having here. I think we make too much of the platforms themselves. You know what I mean? It's, you know,
where are we talking to a computer?
Yes, yes.
You're right there. You're not from country, but you're right there.
And there's a kind of protocol that seems to go with talking through this computer that is, you know, that we are all trying to, you know, people seem to be trying to find it rather than you know, like just having a conversation, you know, you know, because that is the those are the conditions under which we have to live right now. But we
used to be able to talk for 3 hours on a telephone. There's no difference as far as I'm concerned. It's just that this telephone has a camera.
Except that when you used to do that for at the time somebody used to tell you come off the phone, but it was optional. Yeah, it was optional, and now it's not. Now it's in a place where it's who we are and how we communicate. In the work that I do from here,
yeah,
the number of people that I meet for the first time who are apprehensive about talking to this thing, whatever this thing is, and then talking to this thing until they realize that, like, hey, I'm talking to you and you're talking to me.
Yeah.
Right now, we have to continue to find a way to continue doing what we have been doing to keep the level of communication going without letting this thing get in the way.
Can I ask you, because your professional networks, I mean, your life involves dealing with people, dealing with issues, dealing with them individually, dealing with them in groups, dealing with people who are traumatized, dealing with people who are just on the opposite end, think they're too happy. Has it been a seamless transition? Because you're based in Ontario and you deal with people across the Caribbean.
And not just the Caribbean, all over.
I won't take you to your African exploits and European exploits. No, but what has been your experience in transitioning to the COVID contactless world?
Well, it's I mean, like anything else, when you use it for the first time, you're sort of trying to figure out, like what this is, until you realize that the person that you're talking to, like I'm talking to you, I'm not talking to whatever this platform is, I'm talking to you. So if you are in my office, I'm talking to you. I mean, if I call you on the phone, sometimes I'm talking to you. So you become the center of attention for both of us.
Yeah.
And it takes a while for people to get accustomed to that, because especially persons who have never done it before, and they're looking at these platforms as though, like, I'm on show, I don't know, and I'm uncomfortable with where I am because
and concerned. What is the background like, and what is it?
Yeah, well, you see my background.
Concerns that they would not have, even if they came to your office, or even if we met at the mall for lunch, or even if we went, you were meeting someone, you would not, all right, you'll get yourself dressed and you'll come and you'll sit down and you'll have the interaction. But perhaps because I can also see myself, you become obsessed with what you see of yourself rather than conversing with the other person.
I find that there's a sense too that they feel they have less control over what happens on their end. You know what I mean? Even with especially the kind of work, the kind of conversation that I have, like people coming in and so-called interrupting. It's even that at first, people want to apologize for that when that's their life. You know what I mean? and there's this sense of, it's almost like a kind of a tension that you have at first until you realize that I'm talking to you and you're talking to me. And that calls for us to be at a certain place when we communicate, which is a real place. I'm not talking to this image on the other end, I'm talking to you. And I'm not pretending to do that. I'm not conscious of doing that. I'm just doing that, So it's a natural conversation that we're having, and the same kinds of things we talk about in the office. If you feel a little uncomfortable with something here, it doesn't mean it's because of the device that you're feeling uncomfortable. You feel uncomfortable with it anyway. We had to spend. I'm speaking like that now, but like it took me about 3 months before I realized that, like, okay, I'm gonna have to do this, because I was always waiting to say, because it's borders opening next week, and and it wasn't happening. And you say, okay, well then this is how we live now, and the person across is just, they're who they are, and
What about dealing with groups?
it's the same approach, it's, so you're talking to a group of people, and and you're having a conversation with them, and sometimes some of the conversations are difficult. They're difficult conversations, but then again, when you're present, you also have difficult conversations. You find a way to do what you usually do without putting too much energy into it. There has to be a kind of a flow that comes with it, because once you start thinking that like, for example, the first time you start talking, I don't record any of my conversations. I don't do that. The first time you see, boom, this conversation is being recorded. Now that's me. I've come to say, okay, so this conversation is being recorded. So the same thing I could tell you in private, I could say in public, and I'm not holding back anything because I'm talking in a public forum or anything like that. We're just talking. So even if we're having a one-on-one conversation without all this, and you ask me a question, I could say to you, I'm trying ready to answer that question. And it's not because of any. I think people forget, when you talk about new normal, they're not being normal with the new normal. And that's that's because people are suspicious of this whole process.
Think about it. The fact that things are recorded, otherwise I could be taking notes. Or I can have a phone when you're face to face that's recording the entire, or the old tape recorder pressing up.
Yeah.
And it is not abnormal. And as we talk, it really, there are people who have, as you say, they don't know what to make of this. And one of the things that I'm happy that we're having this conversation is that I think this is a conversation that people need to have with each other. So, how is it different? Is it different? You haven't talked to a friend for 2 years. Why? Use, if you WhatsApp, turn on the video.
Yeah.
And talk.
With friends, that's a lot easier, because it's your friend. But when you're talking to persons, especially persons you're meeting for the first time, you know what I mean? It's a normal sort of dynamics you have when you meet someone for the first time and you're having a difficult conversation. The only difference is that, like, we don't touch each other when we're talking about, when we're having difficult conversations anyway, so there's a level of comfort that you have to feel within yourself.
Yeah.
And that's where our challenges are coming. The level of comfort that you have to feel within yourself that allows you to just be open and to be, to freely express yourself, without the threat of, is this recorded? Is this going to come back? It's a lot of people are being faced with the ultimate truth in that, like, this is putting us in a place where we have to become real, and that's not an easy thing for people to do in this kind of uncertainty. And don't get me wrong, I'm talking about conversations here, but you're conscious of the fact that there's a high level of uncertainty. People are really not sure. And in addition to all of that, you're hearing people getting scammed using these platforms and all this sort of things coming back. So there's a lot of, there are a lot of threats as far as people are concerned using this, but it really has to do with our level of comfort with it. It's not easy, especially when you have to change your view of the persons that you're talking to, you don't know what is going to happen with this information that you're sharing. You know, and that's our inner selves that we really need to take a look at.
In this new environment, to avoid being, as we spoke about last week, caved in, and we had the metaphor that you recluse yourself and you find it difficult to reach out to other people. And we use a metaphor of a cave. And we mentioned to people that, you know, when you roll a stone across a cave, you become a tomb. If you're on the wrong side of that stone, an archaeologist will find you in the future and use your little drawings on the wall to try and figure out what was going on with you or what was. And I love your use of the term to avoid, to be able to communicate. Let's not avoid anything. To be able to communicate in this new time, to know what is the path forward and where you have to go. You first have to be real. And I wonder if we know what real is.
You know, a lot of the things that we have been avoiding dealing with, you know, within ourselves.
Like?
When you, well, you know, like for example, some of the events in our lives that have shaped the way we look at things, you know, trauma, you know, that has been kept silent for years, you know, situations that have been always made me uncomfortable, you know, deep-rooted social family issues, you know, that remain unresolved, you know, that have shaped how we look at people and how we look at ourselves. You know, the thing about thinking that you're getting safe, when, as you put it, you roll a stone, when you roll a stone and it becomes a tomb. You think that when you're thinking that's making you safe, it's not actually, because you go deeper into yourself and there's no, you're almost left to your own devices to deal with it. And you haven't been able to deal with it over the years anyway. So what happens is it becomes more intense. So when you do have to interact, you know, you're bringing not the same approach that you had before, but now you're even more acutely aware or more conscious of how this thing impacts you. So when you think you're being safe and being locked off, you're actually intensifying a lot of the issues that you haven't resolved. So when you do, and you can't stay locked off forever. So when you do come back out, you know, there's, you know, you bring that level of uncertainty that you had before, but it comes forward in a more profound way. So what happens is that it impacts your staying away when you think that's being safe. It impacts your relationships even in a more profound way when you do have to come out. So what happens is now is that, like, you figure, well, I gotta run back inside. But then, you know, that whole process continues. You know, so it's we, you know, I'm coming more acutely already. We as human beings, we need to be talking to each other all the time, man. We really do. And so, you know, batting in your crease and sometimes not coming to the wicket at all, you know, all these little all these phrases that we have, and that, you know, we have to do the opposite of what we are actually doing.
I love that descriptor because it's so true. The more we stay away from the practice of interacting and therefore becoming comfortable sharing and exposing yourself to other people, the more you stay away. When you have to come, you're so unpracticed. You're so, your old self coming, but you're not sure if your old self is relevant in this new context. Yeah. That yes, there are people who are just running back and just making the entire thing worse.
Yeah.
For us.
Yeah, and they're not really conscious of doing that. You know, they think they're being safe. You know, and using the whole the whole circumstance that we're in as a rationale for doing that. But it's putting us in a more challenging position than actually coming out and facing with it. You know, it's but we don't see it like that.
Yeah.
Everybody in this time of uncertainty, everybody is looking for something to hold on to, and the surest thing that you have to hold on to, it would seem, is what you have when you lock yourself in. When you lock yourself in, especially if you lock yourself in with other people, people are,
You're
you know,
wrong.
relationships, oftentimes long-standing marriage relationships or long-standing relationships become even more fragile,
Yeah. Yeah.
you know, and at the same time, I suppose the people who you have been talking to before that could kind of keep this thing going and put you in perspective to come back and deal with it, that's cut off.
Yeah.
So you kind of you're on your own. And what options do you have? You know, and you have situations, two people living in a house and they're not talking to each other.
Yeah.
They hardly used to before. But
But they used to go out, they used to go to work, they used to go out, minimize this time.
we don't know what to do with that, because it's not just your problem. It's you know, relationships become more intense, and the level of support that you need is less forthcoming, it would seem. But it's because you have less contact, you know.
And
Less,
also, not only the level of support that you need, but before you get to that step, is I think people, because you now have to face yourself and you're not really able to distract yourself in the way that you could, whether it was go to the mall, go to the bar, go hang out with your girlfriends, go distract yourself with something, that you are realizing how much support you need and admitting that there are areas of weakness and imperfection in you. And well, you ain't talking to anybody, so how do I find my way to at least ask or talk about how do I get the support to help me rebalance myself? Because this new normal does not contain the distractions that cause you to forget about or not think about those areas where you needed help.
yeah, you know, and we refer to them sometimes as distractions, you know, because like I suppose because it takes you off your main course, but it's really your support systems for a lot of people. You know, I could get to a place where I could sit down with you and I could say, God, this thing made me crazy. You know, and I'm not able to do that as freely as I could have before. Because whereas before we could have a long talk into maybe into the morning, I'd be home by a certain time. It's a lot of internal stuff that we have to deal with, you know, the source of all of that. And so we are doing the opposite of what we really need to do in order to put ourselves in a better place.
Which is the opposite, is the withdrawing.
That's right.
We have to force ourselves out. We have to come out of, do not entomb yourself and just start.
Yeah.
The pandemic has done this to us, and I think people talk about the pandemic in a lot of negative ways. The things that we can't do, what we shouldn't do, and the lockdowns, the deaths, the people talk about the friends who are sick, and then you have the vaxxers and the anti-vaxxers, and it's so reflective of the kind of polarized discussions we have, whether it is about politics, about wealth distribution, about religion. It's the same kind of crazy nonsense. There are lots and lots of negatives. But are you seeing good things coming out of this pandemic these last 2 years?
Yeah, lots of good things. You know, I think everybody reaches a point where, I'm thinking that's one of the good things. The good things is when people reach a point when they say, "What's happening here?" Really, you know, because you know, oftentimes they've never asked that question before.
Yeah.
You know, what's really going on, especially when you look down the road and you're not seeing anything that's happening. You know that you know that help doesn't seem to be on the way, because when help comes, that help turns out to be a hindrance. So you're not even sure what help is. What are we doing here? And how are we going to do this? You know, and I'm not talking about survival conversations. I'm talking about renewal of relationships kinds of conversations, you know, because.
And these are all relationships. It's intimate
All
relationships,
relationships.
parental relationships, neighborhood, neighbor, the next door neighbor,
All
the
relationships.
community, the work people, you and the garbage man, you and the mailman, you and service providers. It's every relationship.
It all relationships. And I think that that when people start to ask those questions and look for, and most importantly, look for answers that would be collaborative. Because some, you know, you could look for answer and find the answer being, well, maybe we need to be more into ourselves, and that's the wrong answer. Bam, that's the wrong answer. The wrong, you know, because you're looking for a resolution to how we could continue being human again. Because, you know, we live in communities, we are communal beings, you know, and when we don't have that, then something happens to us, you know, and the things that happen to us, you know, it's not as great as if you get hit by somebody hits your car. It's not that kind of thing that happens. What happens to us is an eternal thing that, like, we start making decisions that take us almost away from our humanity, you know, and think that's a safer place to be, you know, because it's not safe out there. You know, but really asking that question, what are we doing here, and how are we going to reconnect in a way that makes us at first thinking comfortable, and then realize reconnection in and of itself is comfort. Not talking to the same people over and over. You know, because you used to meet new people, right? Because that's a whole thing that is kind of, I mean, that's the other dark place. We automatically don't trust new people. Are they vaccinated? Stay away from me. So I don't know. And that's very real, you know. So how we look at that is important as is even more important than just looking at it, because you could look at it and come to the same conclusions or intensify your conclusion, you know, that, like, we need to stay away. But looking at it means, like, how do we get to being who we instinctively are?
Yeah.
You know, social creatures. You know, where it's unusual to be not a social person. Now it's a norm to be not a social person, or keep your circles close. You know, I'll tell you something. So and we don't see that as isolation. We see that as support.
Yeah.
But prolonged behavior becomes isolation, and every single dysfunction that comes with being totally isolated comes to the fore. And when you add that to some of the stuff that we haven't treated with, we're in a bit of trouble, which is where we are now. You know, nobody tells anybody about anything.
We're finding our way out of it. We're finding our way, and
that's what we need to do. But it's a consciousness we got to take into that, you know. The consciousness is we are finding our way out of it. But I'm not sure that consciousness is prevalent.
And I think the main tool to get out of it is the tool of the conversation.
Yeah.
You just have to start talking.
I mean, I don't want us to kind of undermine the challenge or underestimate the challenge that we're faced with this pandemic, the reality of it. But, you know, as far as I'm concerned, the conversation that we're having now is like, how do you keep yourself growing during this time? You know, rather than locking down and saying, well, I'm going to wait until this thing is finished before I even consider growth. You know what I mean? And having to find creative ways of doing that.
Yeah.
having to find creative ways, you know, because we talk about the natural things that we had before, the natural supports that we had before. Well, the fact is, the circumstances have changed, so we have to find creative ways to keep those natural supports going. And it's not just sort of, well, I shouldn't say not just, it's more than just, you know, like ever so often checking in.
And a casual.
Yeah, you know, there are times when people, you know, so it's and we haven't discovered that yet. And I think that's waiting to be discovered. We got to put all the energy in doing it.
Yeah.
You know, and the being real has to do with like that sort of self-examination, you know, like why are we doing what we are doing right now, and is that the best thing for us to do right now? Not just saying yes, it is because this pandemic is upon us, but going a little deeper than that, and maintaining and establishing our relationships so we could continue to live as a society and not just wait it out.
And this has been delightful. I really enjoyed this conversation.
I'll tell you how I would like to look at this conversation we had today. You know, it's for people to examine their mental space, you know, and really, you know, ask themselves the questions, is this how I really want to do this? And don't ask the question, you know, as a passing fancy, but like really think about if this is how we want. And then the next step is like, well, then what it is what needs to happen, what I really want to do, and how do I do it? Observing all protocols.
Mr. Gibbons, you just put the perfect segue into something that we are going to be doing on Friday, which is doing vision boards. So thank you so very much. I'm looking forward to us having another conversation pretty soon.
Well, you know, the conversation always continues. That's a good thing about conversation.
Thank you so much, Ian.
Okay, take care.
Terry-Ann, you know what? I love a deep thinker, if I may say so. Ian, you go into depth, and not all the time you want someone to go to say what you want them to say to be comfortable. Let me say that. I love the idea, or not the idea, but that's the truth, facing the truth. It's not it's a fact.
Yeah.
It's a fact. If you really look back, especially on that second stage, when you come off that second stage and you want to be you're really being honest with yourself, Terry-Ann, but it could be a bit frightening. So we spoke about values and foundation, but telling the truth is that at a part of that, a part of that foundation. And if you didn't have it, well, now is the time you have to face it.
That's how you get out of the cave.
I totally agree with that. And if you don't want to, you shouldn't, I think, Terry-Ann, you shouldn't face any situation alone, especially when you're a bit confused and fearful. You need to find the person you trust and open up to say, hey, this is how we're feeling. What can we do about it? Yeah, we need to understand that and be honest, you know, where you want to go, what you really want. And I know, Terry, and I live by that. I'm very, this is it. As I said, probably I got that's the foundation. Be honest with yourself. Face the truth. Otherwise, you can't get ahead.
And Jennifer, that takes us straight into the relevance of our Friday forum this Friday.
Our vision board. Yeah.
Decide what is going on here, and is that what you want? You know?
Totally agree.
Let's get together. Let's create that vision. Let's talk to each other about it. This is an opportunity for us to have conversations. You will meet strangers who are not yet your friend. You would get to exchange ideas. It's not someone you know, so you don't have to worry about what they think. Gather your images of what you want, and let's get together and exchange ideas and talk about that. I am so excited about that forum.
Yeah, because Terry, and having that conversation is that's it. Otherwise, nobody would know.
And you'll be
can't read my,
too.
let me tell you. My mother used to say when she called you to talk, I can't read your mind, if you don't say anything, we can't read your mind. And this is it, So we're looking forward, Tarian, for that vision board. You can get you need to just sit and say, okay, this is what I want.
And let's talk about how you
don't be afraid to talk about what you want. And that is so important.
Great. So Jen, we are putting the link again to register in the chat. Well, we had a show today. Jen's mom, Dora, again, 100, your wisdom. Jen, your entire family is so blessed. And in addition to that, we've had a fantastic talk with Ian Jeffords, which went put together with Allison's talk last week. Come on, let's get out of that cave. Let's sign up and register and get some vision boards done.
When you complete that and you feel so good, listen to me, no stopping you after that, no stopping you after that. You're going to open up and say, listen, I know this is what I want. And you tell your partner, your friend, your husband, your wife,
you put it up
anybody that's close to you, listen, this is where I'm heading. You come with me or you stay in the cave. Not as harsh as that, but more or less.
At the end of the day, stay in the cave.
Don't be that rough.
Anyway, we will see you on Friday before we see you.
Yes, definitely.
So,
okay.
Bye.
Bye.
50 Plus Tribe and follow us from Trinidad and Tobago and the Caribbean.
Thank you for joining us on this Connections 50 Plus 5.8G Alive show.
We hope you enjoyed the lively conversation and look forward to seeing you next week.
Don't forget to like our Facebook page and subscribe to our YouTube channel.
We really love getting your feedback. Bye for now.